Mom, did you take your meds this morning? Yeah, I think so. Eleanor, you can't think so. You either did or you didn't. I dropped them. What do you mean you dropped them? On the floor. They're still there. Why are they still there? I didn't pick them up. Silence. Then his voice sharpened. Mom, are you hurt? No. Then why didn't you get up? Another pause. Longer this time. I just didn't feel like it. The bottle hit the tile harder than it should have. Pills scattered. White, yellow, one blue rolling farther than the rest. Eleanor watched them spread like something alive. She didn't move. Her hand was still half open in the air, like she hadn't finished the action, like her body was waiting for instructions that never came. She could have stood up. There was nothing wrong with her legs. No sharp pain, no dizziness, no emergency, just nothing. That was the problem. People think the hard part is falling. It isn't. The hard part is sitting there, fully able to get up, and not seeing the point. Her kitchen was quiet in that way that presses on your ears. The clock ticked, loud, too loud. She stared at the pills, counted them, lost count, started again. Not because she needed to, but because it gave her something to do instead of standing up. Later, she would tell Daniel she was fine. Later, she would laugh it off. Later, she would say, it was nothing. But sitting there on the floor, at 88 years old, Eleanor Hayes realized something she couldn't explain over the phone. Her body hadn't failed her. Something else had. In the United States, nearly 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls each year. That's what the reports say. But what they don't measure is how many people don't get back up right away. Not because they can't, because they don't want to. Eleanor reached for one pill, stopped halfway, let her hand drop again, and for the first time in a long time, she wondered not if she was getting older, but if she was slowly disappearing from her own life. That was the moment everything started to change. Before we go any further, let me ask you to do one thing. If stories like this make you stop and think about aging, about independence, about what really matters, take a second to like this video and subscribe. This channel shares stories that don't sugarcoat getting older, and today's story might change how you see it entirely. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't theory. It's what happened after Eleanor faced the moment most people are afraid of, and how that moment led her straight into every responsible solution people recommend, one by one. And why, in the end, none of them were the answer she thought she needed. Mom, I'm coming this weekend. You don't need to do that. I do. I'm fine. You just told me you sat on the kitchen floor and didn't get up. I said I couldn't get up. No, you didn't. You said you didn't feel like it. Daniel arrived 2 days later. He didn't knock the way he used to. He let himself in. Mom? In the kitchen. He walked in, eyes scanning everything, the counter, the sink, the floor, looking for damage, looking for proof. You okay? I'm standing, aren't I? That's not the same thing. He picked up the pill bottle, turned it in his hand. You missed Thursday night. I was tired. You missed Friday morning too. I said I was tired. He set the bottle down slowly. Mom, this isn't about being tired. She didn't answer, because for the first time, she knew he was right. People think the problem at this age is the body. Falls, bones, blood pressure, medication schedules. That's what the charts track. That's what the doctors measure. But sitting there 2 days earlier on the cold tile, Eleanor had felt something no chart would ever record. It wasn't pain. It was absence. I'm not afraid of falling, she said finally. Daniel looked up. Then what are you afraid of? She hesitated, not because she didn't know, because saying it out loud would make it real. I'm not afraid of dying either. Okay, she met his eyes. I'm afraid of becoming a life that needs managing. He didn't respond right away, because that wasn't what he expected. That night, after he went to bed, Eleanor stayed in the living room. The TV was on. It had been on all day. She couldn't remember what she'd watched. The sound filled the space. That was its job, not to entertain, to keep the silence from getting too loud. Dinner had been a frozen meal. She ate it standing at the counter, didn't bother with a plate, didn't sit down, didn't taste much. This wasn't new. This was the routine. Morning pills, coffee, sit, TV, sit, phone call maybe, sit, heat something up, eat, sit, sleep, repeat. From the outside, it looked stable. No emergencies, no hospital visits, no major incidents, independent, safe. That's the word people use, safe. But safe can be a quiet kind of erosion. In the US, over 40% of adults over 65 report feeling lonely on a regular basis. And studies have shown that chronic loneliness carries the same health risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But no one installs handrails for loneliness. No one prescribes medication for having no reason to get up. Eleanor looked around the room. Everything was in its place. Nothing was broken. Nothing was wrong. And that was exactly the problem. No one needed her. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not in any way that required her to move, to think, to show up. She wasn't living badly. She just wasn't living toward anything. Daniel came back into the room. "You left the TV on again." "I like the noise." "You're not even watching it." "I know." He muted it. The silence dropped instantly, heavy, unavoidable. "Mom," he said quietly, "this isn't about the fall." She nodded. "I know." And for the first time, they were talking about the same thing, not her body, her life. And once you see that difference, you can't unsee it. "Mom, we need to talk about this." Eleanor didn't look up. "We are talking." "No, I mean really talk." She gave a small, tired smile. "That's usually not a good sentence." Daniel pulled out a chair and sat across from her, not beside her, across, like a meeting, like something had already been decided and now needed to be presented. "I've been thinking," he said, and that word, "we," wasn't there. But she heard it anyway, because no one says, "I've been thinking," in that tone unless someone else has already agreed. "Thinking about what?" "About what happened, about you being here alone." "I've been here alone for 5 years." "That's not the same anymore." There it was, not loud, not dramatic, but final. He leaned forward slightly, hands clasped. "I just want to make sure you're safe." Safe. That word again. "I am safe." "You were on the floor for how long?" She didn't answer, because time had stretched in a way she couldn't explain. Daniel took a breath. Slower now, more careful. "Okay, so I looked into a few options." Options. Eleanor felt it immediately, a tightening, not in her chest, somewhere deeper. "Option 1, he said. "There's a senior living community about 15 minutes from here. It's not what you think, it's nice. Private rooms, activities, staff on site. People your age." People your age. She said nothing. "Option 2, we can get someone to come in, a caregiver, just during the day at first. Help with meals, meds, anything you need." Anything you need. Still, she said nothing. "And option 3, he hesitated. "You could come stay with me, Chicago, just for a while. See how it feels." There it was, laid out cleanly, 3 doors. Eleanor looked at him, really looked. He wasn't trying to control her. He was scared. And love, when it gets scared, starts organizing things, fixing things, reducing risk. "Those are my choices?" she asked. "They're options." She let out a soft breath. "Options don't always mean choice." He frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means sometimes the decision has already been made, and you're just being walked toward it slowly." "That's not what this is," he said quickly. "I know you think that." Silence settled between them. Not angry, not sharp, just heavy. "I'm not trying to take anything away from you," he added. "I know." I just don't want something worse to happen. She nodded, because that part was true. But sitting there listening to her son carefully lay out 3 reasonable, responsible, widely accepted solutions, Eleanor felt something shift. Not relief, not comfort, something smaller. Each option made sense. Each option was safe. Each option was exactly what people recommend, and yet, every single one of them required the same thing. Her life would no longer be fully hers. She glanced around the kitchen, the same counter, the same chair, the same quiet clock, everything unchanged. Except now there was a timeline, a direction, a sense that staying exactly as she was no longer considered acceptable. Daniel reached across the table. "Mom, you don't have to decide today." She gave a small nod, but inside she already knew something he didn't. This wasn't going to be about choosing the best option. It was going to be about figuring out why none of them felt right, and that question wasn't going to be easy to answer. "You don't have to say yes," Daniel said as he parked. "I know. We're just looking. I know." He turned off the engine but didn't get out right away. "Just keep an open mind, okay?" Eleanor nodded. She had learned something about that phrase. Keep an open mind usually meant, please don't say no too quickly. The building looked exactly like what he promised. Clean, bright, quiet, no smell, no chaos, no sign of anything wrong. Inside, the woman at the front desk smiled immediately. "You must be Eleanor. We've been expecting you." Of course they had. The hallway floors were polished, too polished. Every step echoed slightly, like the space was listening back. "Most of our residents really love it here," the woman said as they walked. She spoke in a steady, practiced rhythm, not cold, just rehearsed. They passed a common room, a television mounted on the wall, muted, 6 people sitting in chairs facing it anyway, not watching, just facing. "Morning activities usually start around 9, she continued. "We have light stretching, then arts and crafts, sometimes music therapy." Eleanor slowed slightly as they walked past. One woman was holding a piece of yarn, not knitting, just holding it. "Lunch is at 12, the guide said. "Afternoons we have movies, social hours, sometimes guest speakers." Social hours, scheduled. They stopped at a door. "This would be your room." It was clean, perfectly arranged, a bed, a chair, a window facing a courtyard, neutral colors, nothing personal, nothing wrong. "There's a board here," the woman said, pointing. "Each day we write the schedule so it's easy to follow." Eleanor stepped closer. Monday, 9 o'clock, stretching 10 o'clock, crafts 12 o'clock, lunch 2 o'clock, movie 4 o'clock, social hour. She read it twice, not because it was complicated, because it was simple, too simple. Daniel watched her carefully. "What do you think?" She didn't answer right away, because there was nothing obviously wrong. That was the problem. Everything here worked. Everything here was designed. Everything here was accounted for. No sharp edges, no uncertainty, no risk, and no space. "I've been making my own decisions since I was a teenager," she said quietly. The woman smiled politely, not really listening. "I've lived through things you can't schedule," Eleanor continued. "Loss, change, years where nothing went according to plan." She looked back at the board. 2 o'clock, movie 4 o'clock, social hour. "And now," she said, almost to herself, "I'm supposed to sit in a chair at 2 o'clock because someone wrote it on a board." Daniel shifted slightly. "Mom, it's just structure. It helps." "Helps." Eleanor turned to him. "I don't need help knowing what time it is." The woman stepped in quickly, smoothing the moment. "Of course, participation is always optional." Optional, another word that sounded like choice. Eleanor smiled, a polite smile, the kind you use when you understand something the other person doesn't. They walked back through the hallway, same chairs, same silence, same television, One man looked up as she passed, not curious, not engaged, just aware for a second, then gone again. Outside, the air felt different, not fresher, just unscripted. "Well?" Daniel asked. Eleanor took a breath, longer this time. "It's not bad," she said, and she meant it. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't neglectful. It wasn't anything like the horror stories people tell, but it wasn't alive. "Everything was taken care of," she said slowly. Daniel nodded, waiting. "Except the part of me that needs a reason to wake up." He didn't respond, because there was no argument for that. They stood there for a moment, between the building behind them and the life she hadn't figured out yet. And for the first time since the conversation started, Eleanor knew one thing clearly. She wasn't going to choose safety if it meant disappearing quietly inside it. Just try it for a couple of weeks. "I don't need someone watching me." "She's not watching you, Mom. She's helping." "I didn't ask for help." "You didn't ask to sit on the kitchen floor either." "That's different." "Is it?" Linda arrived at exactly 8 a.m., not 7:58, not 8:02, exactly 8. She knocked once, firm, professional. "Ms. Hayes?" "Come in." She walked in with a bag, a clipboard, and a smile that didn't ask questions. "Good morning. I'm Linda." "I know." Within 10 minutes, she had already opened the curtains, checked the fridge, and moved 3 things on the counter, not drastically, just enough that Eleanor noticed. "Let's start with breakfast," Linda said. "I already had coffee." "That's not breakfast." "I've been having coffee for breakfast for 40 years. Linda smiled. "We're going to add something to that." Eggs appeared, toast, a plate, set down in front of her, neat, balanced, correct. Eleanor sat, because that seemed to be what the moment required. "Go ahead," Linda said. She took a bite. It was fine. Everything about it was fine. That was the pattern. Linda cleaned, efficiently, too efficiently. Drawers were reorganized, cabinets adjusted, things placed where they made more sense, except they didn't make sense to Eleanor anymore. "Where's the salt?" "Second drawer, left side." "It's always been next to the stove." This is more accessible. Accessible. Lunch came at 12 o'clock, not 12:15, not when she was hungry, 12 o'clock. "What would you like?" Linda asked. "I'll make something." "Oh no, that's okay, I've got it." And just like that, something small disappeared. By the 3rd day, Eleanor noticed something else. The remote was always closer to Linda. "What are we watching?" Eleanor asked once. "Oh, this one's good," Linda said, already pressing play. It wasn't bad. Nothing Linda chose was ever bad. But none of it was hers. "Time for your afternoon meds," Linda said at 2 o'clock. "I usually take them later." "It's better to keep it consistent." Better. Everything Linda did was better, healthier, cleaner, safer. Eleanor stood in her own kitchen that afternoon and watched someone else move through it with confidence, opening cabinets, closing drawers, belonging. And she realized something quietly, without drama. This was no longer entirely her space. "Do you need anything else before I go?" Linda asked at 4 o'clock. "No." "All right, I'll see you tomorrow." The door closed. Silence again. But different this time. Eleanor walked to the counter, opened a drawer, paused, closed it again. She didn't feel like cooking. Not because she was tired, because it didn't feel like her kitchen anymore. She sat down, looked around. Everything was cleaner than it had been in months, more organized, more functional, easier, and yet something essential had shifted. "She made my life easier," Eleanor said out loud, though no one was there to hear it. She rested her hands in her lap. And somehow, smaller. The next morning at 7:59, Eleanor was already awake, sitting in the chair, waiting, not for something she needed, but for something that had quietly taken over the rhythm of her day. And for the first time, she wondered, if this was what help felt like, What exactly was it taking in return? Mom, just come stay with us for a bit. I don't want to be in the way. You won't be. Everyone says that. I mean it. Just try it. Chicago felt faster, not louder, not brighter, just faster. Daniel's house was full, voices, footsteps, movement that didn't stop. Grandma! A small body ran into her legs before she could set her bag down. Hey there, Eleanor said, catching her balance. Are you staying? For a little while. Good. That part was real. The warmth, the laughter, the feeling of being pulled into something alive. Dinner was at 6 o'clock. Not discussed, not flexible, just 6 o'clock. We usually eat early because of the kids, Daniel said. That's fine. It wasn't fine, but it was easier to say that than explain why. Eleanor had eaten dinner at 7:30 for 40 years, sometimes 8 o'clock, slow, quiet. Her time. Now it was plates moving, voices overlapping, forks clinking. Mom, sit here, Daniel said, guiding her to a chair. Not asking, placing. She sat, because again, that seemed to be what the moment required. Mornings started early, too early. The house woke up all at once, doors opening, showers running, coffee brewing, no silence to ease into, no space to begin slowly. Eleanor woke at 5 o'clock, like she always had. But here she stayed in bed, not wanting to interrupt, not wanting to exist before the house was ready for her. She learned quickly where to stand, when to speak, when not to. Do you need anything? Daniel asked often. I'm fine. She helped where she could, folded laundry, cleared dishes, watched the kids. But even in helping, she could feel it. This wasn't her life. She was fitting into someone else's. One night she went to the kitchen for water. Voices stopped her in the hallway. Daniel and his wife. Low. Careful. We just need to adjust the schedule a bit, Daniel said. It's just a lot with the mornings, his wife replied. I know. I'll figure it out. Adjust the schedule. Eleanor stood still, not moving forward, not going back. She wasn't the subject of the sentence, but she was inside it. That was enough. The next morning, she poured her coffee before anyone else came down, stood at the counter, drank it quietly, watching a life move around her, without needing her in it. Did you sleep okay? Daniel asked later. Yes. You sure? Yes. He nodded, satisfied, because everything looked right. She was there, safe, surrounded, optimized. That was the word she didn't say out loud. Every problem had a solution. Every inconvenience had an adjustment. Every variable, including her, could be managed into place. And that was the mistake. Not cruelty, not neglect, not even misunderstanding. Just a quiet, well-meaning belief that a life could be improved by making it easier to handle. Eleanor finished her coffee, set the mug down, and for the first time since she arrived, she felt something clear. She didn't need a better system. She needed a life that still belonged to her, and she was starting to understand she wasn't going to find it here. Excuse me, sorry, can you just hold this for a second? Eleanor looked up. A man, mid-30s, slightly out of breath, one hand gripping a backpack, the other trying to steady a little girl who had already decided she wasn't moving another step. I just need to fix this strap. She won't let go. The girl tightened her arms around his leg. No. I'm not going anywhere, Sophie. I just need 2 seconds. Eleanor reached out without thinking. I can hold the bag. He hesitated, just for a second, then handed it over. Thank you. I'm Miguel. Eleanor. The girl peeked at her, suspicious. Hi, Eleanor said gently. No response. Miguel crouched, fixed the strap quickly, then stood again. Sorry about that. Mornings are... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Eleanor nodded. I remember. That was all. No plan, no decision, just a moment. The next day she saw them again, same park, same bench. "Hey," Miguel said, recognizing her. "Hi." Sophia was drawing something on the ground with a stick. "What is it?" Eleanor asked. "A house? Looks strong." "It is." Miguel laughed lightly. "She says that about everything." 3 days later. "Eleanor, can I ask you something?" She turned. "Sure. I've got a shift I can't miss, just an hour. Would you mind sitting with her?" There it was, a real ask, not polite, not theoretical, needed. Eleanor looked at Sophia, then back at him. "Of course." Miguel exhaled, relief, immediate. "Thank you, really, I'll be quick." He left, just like that. Trust handed over without ceremony. Sophia sat next to Eleanor, quiet at first. Then, "My dad says I talk too much." Eleanor smiled. "Your dad is wrong." That was the beginning. It didn't happen all at once, nothing dramatic, no announcement, just small things repeating. Sophia showing up at the park bench again, Sophia asking questions. "Why do your hands shake?" "Because they've done a lot of work." Miguel stopping by. "Can you watch her for 20 minutes? Can you keep an eye on her while I run across the street?" Eleanor said yes. Not because she had nothing else to do, but because for the first time in months, there was something that needed her to show up. One afternoon, Sophia came to the house. "Can I see where you live?" Eleanor hesitated, then opened the door. The kitchen felt different with someone else in it, not organized, not controlled, alive. "What's that?" Sophia asked, pointing to a pot. "Soup." "Can I help?" Eleanor paused. She hadn't cooked like this in months, not for someone. "All right," she said. "You stir." The spoon was too big for Sophia's hand. She held it anyway. "Is this how you do it?" "Close enough." They stood there together, soup simmering, something familiar returning. Later, Miguel knocked. "Sorry, I got caught." He stopped when he saw them, Sophia at the stove, Eleanor beside her. "Smells amazing," he said. Eleanor handed him a bowl without thinking. "Sit." He did. Because again, that seemed to be what the moment required. They ate, not scheduled, not planned, just happening. For the first time in a long time, Eleanor wasn't thinking about time, or safety, or structure. She was inside something real, messy, unplanned, necessary. That night, sitting alone again, the silence didn't feel the same, because now she knew something. For the first time in months, she said quietly, "Someone needed me." She looked down at her hands, still shaking, still old. "Not because I'm old," she added, a small smile, "but because I'm useful." And that changed everything. "Mom, you sound different." "I am." Daniel paused on the other end. "In a good way?" Eleanor looked across the small kitchen. Sophia's drawing was still on the table, a crooked house, a sun too big for the sky. Miguel's jacket draped over the chair from earlier, a bowl in the sink she hadn't rushed to clean. "Yes," she said, "in a good way." It wasn't dramatic. Nothing had been fixed. Her hands still shook in the morning. Her knees still reminded her of every year she had lived. Some days she still woke up tired before she even stood up. The difference wasn't in her body. It was in what the day asked of her. "Eleanor, can you watch her for a bit?" "Eleanor, do you have any more of that soup?" "Eleanor, can you show me how you did that?" Small things, but they added up. She wasn't filling time anymore. Time was filling her. One afternoon, Sophia sat at the table again, coloring something new. "What are you drawing today?" Eleanor asked. "A better house?" "What was wrong with the first one?" "It didn't have enough room." Eleanor smiled. "Room for what?" Sophia didn't look up. "For people." That stayed with her. Not room for safety, not room for perfection, room for people. That was the piece she had been missing. Not structure, not help, not protection. Presence. Later that week, Daniel came to visit. He walked in the same way he had before, fast, alert, scanning, looking for problems. But this time, he stopped. Sophia was on the floor. Miguel was at the counter. Eleanor was standing in the middle of it, not sitting, not waiting, moving, talking, laughing. "Hey," Daniel said slowly. Eleanor turned. "Hey." He looked around again, not confused, just recalibrating. "This is different." Miguel stepped forward. "Daniel, right? I've heard about you." They shook hands. Simple. Easy. Sophia ran up. "This is my friend." She pointed at Eleanor. "My best friend." Eleanor laughed. "Careful. That's a big title." But something in her chest shifted when she said it. Daniel watched all of it, not interrupting, not correcting, just watching. Later, when the house quieted down again, he sat across from her, the same position as before, the same table. "You seem—" he started, then stopped. Eleanor waited. "You seem like yourself again." She held his gaze. "I never stopped being myself." A small pause. "I just didn't have anywhere to put it." He nodded slowly, because now he understood something he hadn't before. All those options, all those plans, all those careful, responsible solutions. They had all been built around one idea, that her life needed to be managed. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was that her life had stopped connecting. "I thought I needed help," Eleanor said quietly. "I thought that too," Daniel admitted. She looked around the room again, not perfect, not organized, not optimized, but alive. "I didn't need a place where everything was done for me," she said. She let the words settle. "I needed a place where something still belonged to me." Daniel didn't argue, because there was nothing to argue with. Outside, Sophia's voice carried faintly from the sidewalk, Miguel calling after her, the sound of a life in motion. Eleanor stood slowly, not because she had to, because she wanted to. She walked to the door, opened it, let the noise in. That used to be the thing she avoided. Now it was the thing that kept her here. She turned back once more. Not to check the room, not to make sure everything was in place, just to take it in. This wasn't safer, it wasn't easier, it wasn't even predictable, but it was hers, and that made all the difference. "Don't look for care first," she said, almost to herself. "Look for connection. Because in the end, that's what keeps you getting up." If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Leave a comment below. What still gives your life a reason to matter today? I'd love to read your thoughts, because next time, I'll be sharing something most people never talk about. Why siblings become strangers over time. I cut off mine at 68. No regrets. Thank you for watching. And remember, your best years aren't behind you.